The Rebellion of Alden, a tale of defiance. The moon hung high in the night sky, casting a silvery glow over the dense forests of Alden. Shadows danced among the trees as a lone figure darted through the underbrush, breath ragged and heart-pounding. Edward Fletcher, a former blacksmith turned rebel leader, knew the risks he faced. The territory of Lord William Darrow was heavily guarded, and any sign of dissent was met with ruthless punishment. But tonight, Edward had no choice. His plan to free the people of Alden from Darrow's tyranny was set in motion, and failure was not an option. The whistle of an arrow sliced through the air, narrowly missing Edward's head. He ducked and rolled, feeling the sting of a branch scrape his cheek. He had to keep moving. The secret meeting with his fellow rebels was only a mile away, and the fate of the uprising depended on his survival. His thoughts raced as he recalled the events that had led to this desperate flight. Lord Darrow ruled Alden with an iron fist. His taxes bled the villagers dry, and his enforcers, a band of ruthless mercenaries, ensured that any resistance was swiftly crushed. The village square had become a place of public executions. A grim reminder of what happened to those who dared defy the Lord. Edward had witnessed too many of his friends and neighbors suffer under Darrow's cruelty, and he could no longer stand idly by. The turning point came when Darrow's men burned down the village's only granary, accusing the villagers of hoarding grain. Starvation loomed over Alden, and Edward knew that action had to be taken. Gathering a small group of trusted allies, he began to plot a rebellion. They called themselves the Alden Defenders, and their mission was clear: overthrow Darrow and bring justice to the oppressed. The rebels' plan was daring, perhaps even suicidal. They aimed to storm Darrow's castle, free the imprisoned villagers, and ignite a full-scale revolt. But first, they needed to secure weapons and rally more supporters. Edward's journey through the forest was part of this plan. He was to meet with a sympathizer who promised a cache of stolen weapons, enough to arm their growing numbers. As Edward neared the meeting point, he heard the unmistakable sound of clashing steel. Fear gripped his heart as he crept closer, peering through the trees. The scene that greeted him was chaos. A group of Darrow's men had ambushed the rebels, and a fierce battle was underway. Edward's contact lay on the ground, unmoving. Rage fueled Edward as he charged into the fray, his blacksmith's hammer swinging with deadly precision. He felled 2 of Darrow's men before they realized he was there. The remaining rebels, bolstered by Edward's arrival, fought with renewed vigor. The forest echoed with the sounds of combat, but it was over quickly. Darrow's men lay defeated, but the cost was high. Many of the rebels were wounded, and their contact was dead. Edward knelt beside the fallen man, a young farmer named Thomas. With a heavy heart, he retrieved the map Thomas had been carrying. It showed the location of the weapons cache, hidden in an abandoned mine. Edward swore to himself that Thomas's sacrifice would not be in vain. Days later, Edward and his remaining comrades stood before the abandoned mine. It was a place of legend, said to be haunted by the spirits of miners who had perished in a collapse. Edward pushed aside his fears and led the way inside. The cache was there, just as Thomas had promised. The rebels armed themselves, their resolve steeled by the weight of the weapons in their hands. The next phase of their plan was the most dangerous, breaking into Darrow's castle to free the prisoners. Under the cover of darkness, they approached the imposing structure. Edward's heart raced as they scaled the walls, using ropes and grappling hooks. Reaching the top, they silently dispatched the guards and slipped inside. The dungeon was a place of nightmares. The stench of rot and despair filled the air, and the moans of the imprisoned echoed through the stone halls. Edward found the keys and began unlocking the cells, one by one. Emaciated figures emerged, eyes wide with hope and fear. As the last cell was opened, the alarm sounded. Darrow's men were alerted, and the castle erupted in chaos. Edward led the prisoners through the castle's winding corridors, fighting off guards at every turn. The clash of steel and the cries of battle filled the air. The rebels fought with the ferocity of those who had nothing left to lose. Bursting into the courtyard, they were met with a wall of Darrow soldiers. Edward raised his hammer, ready for the final stand. The odds were against them, but they fought with the strength of their convictions. The courtyard became a battlefield, a maelstrom of violence and determination. As the first light of dawn broke over Alden, the sounds of battle finally ceased. Lord Darrow lay defeated, his reign of terror ended. The villagers emerged from their homes, disbelief and joy mingling on their faces. Edward stood among his comrades, battered but victorious. The rebellion had succeeded. In the days that followed, Alden began to heal. The people, free from Darrow's cruelty, started rebuilding their lives. Edward, now a symbol of hope and resilience, vowed to lead them into a new era of justice and peace. The memory of those who had fallen in the fight for freedom would never be forgotten, and their legacy would inspire generations to come. Epilogue. The story of Edward Fletcher and the Alden defenders became a legend, a tale of courage and defiance against tyranny. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the light of hope could shine through. And as the years passed, the people of Alden cherished their hard-won freedom, forever grateful to the blacksmith who had dared to dream of a better future. Like, subscribe and share, press bell icon for the more exciting stories.